Hello and welcome. Depending on where you are joining us from, it may be good morning or afternoon. We have people coming to the webinar from several locations outside of the US, and so we're excited to have you join us. I am Dara Macon. I lead strategic partnerships and engagement for SourceLink, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rob Williams, Director of SourceLink today. And we are super excited to bring together this panel of great presenters to talk about the concept of the hub and spoke model. And we felt it was very appropriate to be able to bring this group together because this is in celebration of Global Entrepreneurship Week, which is actually its 15th anniversary this year. So before we hear from our speakers, I just wanted to share a few housekeeping notes. Please keep yourself on mute during the presentations. We want you to feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat so folks can see where you're calling in from. Be sure and drop your location as well as your name. We are going to allow a few minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A. So please, if you have any questions, drop those into the chat. If you want those directed to one of the presenters specifically, let us know. Or if you just have a general question, we will definitely try and get to those. We are recording the webinar, so we will be sharing a link after the today's session. You should look for a follow-up communication via email with the link to the recording so that you can go back and if you want to revisit anything that you heard about today. SourceLink is a national network of communities that are doing entrepreneurship-led economic development and ecosystem building work. So we've been longtime champions of this hub and spoke model, and we are super excited to share some of the expertise from some of our friends and affiliates today on this webinar. To get things kicked off, we have a pre-recorded opening remarks from Jonathan Ortsman, who is president of Global Entrepreneurship Network and also part of this Global Entrepreneurship Week celebration. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ortmans. I'm president of the Global Entrepreneurship Network and very much active in Global Entrepreneurship Week. So huge thanks to Casey SourceLink, to all the SourceLink community for the work you do in participating during Global Entrepreneurship Week. And thanks for including me in today's panel. I'm going to try to do three things. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing as of November 2022 in terms of the state of entrepreneurship around the world, a little bit about what we're doing during Global Entrepreneurship Week, and of course, finishing with remarks to kick off this panel about hub and spoke entrepreneurship. So first of all, let me just say, since the pandemic began, we have indeed seen increasing rates of new firm formation across the globe. The number of ecosystems generating more than $4 billion has more than doubled in the past 4 years, and a massive 91 of the ecosystems that we study created at least one unicorn in 2021 alone. The top emerging ecosystems now represent $540 billion in ecosystem value. What does that mean? Well, that's a 55% increase from last year. What are some of the characteristics among the successful ecosystems we see? Well, Bradfield would be very happy to see that almost all of them have no blueprint, no top-down management. They're allowed to grow organically as complex systems of relationships, trust, inspirational stories, and of course, common goals. Secondly, which is I think of particularly interest to our SourceLink communities, they empower entrepreneurs with resources for what is already working. Thirdly, I think we see that they are indeed more inclusive and transparent, something we will talk about, but economies do, of course, suffer when you leave people out. And finally, they are contagious. They're influenced by their neighbors. So the ones that are connected to each other grow faster. But as I think our friends at the Kauffman Foundation and all of our partners in America's New Business Plan and the Start Us Up Coalition will remind us, it's not all rosy news. I'll give you 5 examples. First of all, people are not benefiting equally from this startup economy. And while down from a whopping 87% 10 years ago, the 10 largest startup ecosystems account for 68% of the global exit value. Thirdly, something we're all working on, only 17% of tech founders are still female, and the majority of the ecosystems we studied, we didn't see any that had more than 50% women founders. Policymakers, they're still being caught off guard around the world by the disruption of their highly regulated industries. They're always late adapters, late to the table, slowing down this path. And then finally, I think, fear. I think we're seeing fear among most of our communities. And it's why I think people like SourceLink and Jen, why we do Global Entrepreneurship Week. We know that entrepreneurs are not shy when it comes to problems. And when disruption happens, whether it's pandemics or war, recessions, industry disruption, and so forth, they simply see an infinite number of new solutions to test. When we conceived of Global Entrepreneurship Week 15 years ago with the Kauffman Foundation, we had several goals, but one particular simple goal, which is we wanted to show citizens of all nations and communities that Silicon Valley had no monopoly in entrepreneurship. We set out to inspire and give confidence to all citizens, but especially those from historically underrepresented communities. We wanted them to know that they too could be dreamers, they could be doers, risk takers. And I think now through national campaigns, we now have 200 nations united behind that single global mission of encouraging more of their citizens to consider the path of entrepreneurship, because we all know the world does need more entrepreneurs, more leaders, more people comfortable in this frightening, uncertain time. We want citizens rethinking, we want them ideating, we want them, of course, creating jobs and new economic value for their local economies, but we want them improving their own lives too. So this week, during Global Entrepreneurship Week, we've organized things around 4 main pillars. First of all, entrepreneurship education. Secondly, ecosystems. Thirdly, policy. And finally, perhaps most importantly, inclusion. So communities of all kinds this week are hard at work trying to inspire and welcome more of their citizens, more of you, to be a new generation of dreamers and builders. So Global Entrepreneurship Week this week is offering talks, forums like this one, networking events, hackathons, and award ceremonies. It's also offering dozens of pitch competitions, anchored, by the way, by our main Entrepreneurship World Cup. The Entrepreneurship World Cup in the United States will actually happen after Thanksgiving in Austin. If you're interested in applying, go to entrepreneurshipworldcup.com. We have $1 million in prizes, so trying to get more local communities to join. And while, of course, philanthropic leaders like the Kauffman Foundation are at the heart of Global Entrepreneurship Week, you'll also hear from corporations like FedEx, who's sponsoring GWUSA, and President Cyril Ramaphosa and other heads of state who will be joining me this week at our 22 on Sloan campus for a hackathon in Johannesburg. And then we'll also hear, of course, from thousands of entrepreneurial support organizations, investors, community leaders, and of course, entrepreneurs themselves. There will be lots of news and announcements too, ranging from the fact that we just announced the opening of our latest Gen campus in Turkey. We'll also be having a major announcement in the United States. We're ever so proud of rolling out our new equitable access credit program that we'll be doing in partnership with Hello Alice. And so we'll see a great deal of things happening. While in towns like Kansas City, there will be hundreds of live events across communities. For those that cannot travel, there will be lots online too. I, for one, will be hosting various leaders on my podcast throughout Global Entrepreneurship Week, including sort of early founders of GW, ministers, entrepreneurs, and actually at least one of our global partners who's actually been with us since day one of GW. I won't, you can go to your favorite podcast where you find your favorite channel to find your podcast to find out who, but this particular organization has been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. So it's super exciting conversations online too. And obviously, if you prefer live sessions, but you can't leave home right now, we've also got something for you. We'll also be opening registration this week during Global Entrepreneurship Week to our main global gathering, where we have delegations from 200 nations coming together at the Global Entrepreneurship Congress that will take place next year from May 1 through 4 in Melbourne, Australia. So make that your big trip of the year. Come and join us. Come and join all the others in the field. So everything during Global Entrepreneurship this week shares this common value proposition that we want to welcome those from historically underrepresented entrepreneurial ecosystems. And under this theme of transforming our world, GW 2022 will, we hope, inspire and light the candle in the hearts and minds of more people, no matter where they're from, and make a further indentation in our effort to level this global playing field. We want to make it possible for anyone, anywhere, to start or scale a firm. So finally, in the few minutes that you've afforded me, as promised, to kick off our panel, I'll share a little bit about how Jen's hub and spoke models for your thought and discussion, how they operate. We'd like to share a little bit more about that. I mean, first of all, you should know, of course, that Gen was built from the bottom up by the communities that celebrate Global Entrepreneurship Week. And obviously, we serve as a platform for developing and operating programs and, of course, public policies and research aimed at strengthening entrepreneurship around the world. You can find more about us on genglobal.org. But first, let me tell you, in terms of hub and spoke, what we decided not to do in terms of this model. We did not, despite immense pressure on me at the outset to set up regional hubs, we did not organize regionally. Regionally meaning clusters of countries. Organizing the world around this notion that we could have regions of the world and nations and then global, we didn't think would work. We had benchmarked a lot of our communities. We talked to them about what works and what doesn't work. And inevitably, we've learned that people cluster together as ecosystems, not just around geography. In fact, not really around geography. I just did a podcast with a minister from El Salvador, and she said, you know, her favorite partner for collaborating and alignment of what they're doing is actually in the Middle East. It's not another country in Central America. So the way we've organized our things is that we have this integrated set of two hubs. The first hub is a global hub where we have 16 spokes, 16 work streams of activities that we do at Gen. And then we have national hubs, and we don't have anything in between, nothing regionally. And the national hubs, of course, have their spokes in terms of their programs, whether delivering Gen programming or whether delivering the programming of our partners, either at the global level or at the local level. And those two hub and spoke models interface. And the reason why we make them work together is that we're mitigating the risk against quality problems. The concern when you're trying to do this on a global level, when you have so many different cultures and languages and sizes of economies and level of economic development and level of maturity of the ecosystems, you have to come at it from two angles. So we come at it from two hub and spokes. One where we've got the backup of the globally guided and directed programs and intervention and oversight and engagement, and another where we, of course, have that national leadership of everything Gen, everything, as we say, all the things happening under the compass in countries around the world. So that's our way of doing it. I'm not sure if it's the right way. We get a lot of people that say, oh, we want to be regions, but that was our big model to avoid. And it's worked. I mean, from our perspective, I think we're where we need to be, and we're very proud of what's come together. So without further ado, I'll turn over to the rest of the panel and wish everybody happy Global Entrepreneurship Week. Thanks for having me.
What a way to kick things off, right? Pretty impressive. Celebrating 15 years of global entrepreneurship. And Jonathan is always wonderful to hear from. He's always such an inspiring guy, and the network that he has built is truly impressive. Now what we'd like to do is actually invite our next presenter, Ed Javier. He's a startup veteran, a co-founder of the Milwaukee Startup Week, currently serves as the Entrepreneurship Program Director for the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. And why we've invited him here to be part of this presentation is because through his leadership and vision, WEDC worked really closely with partners to actually create a statewide network delivered and controlled regionally, branded Start in Wisconsin. It's my sincere pleasure to welcome Ed to share a little bit more about this initiative. And then following that, we'll hear from Tony, who's actually one of the regions within the statewide network. Ed, go ahead and take us away.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, all. And I guess it's international also, since we've got folks that I saw chimed in. So Wisconsin, again, my name's Ed Javier, Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation for Wisconsin. Wisconsin's in the middle of the US on the northern side, roughly about 6 million in population. So for those of you that don't know, that's kind of the space we cover. We've got two big metros, Milwaukee and Madison, where the University of Wisconsin resides. And running the entrepreneur programs, I'll give you guys the story of how we came up with our hub and spoke model. And it was actually by accident, almost by need. We had a group of ESOs, and I'll throw that out there right now, but I'll explain the ESO. So these are organizations that support our entrepreneurs in the state. We had about 7 of them in the Milwaukee region get together and talk about what were the issues they were all facing that were similar that they wanted to solve so that whole region could kind of accelerate and assist their entrepreneurs to succeed. One of the things they came up with was, hey, you know what, we should have some kind of online platform where entrepreneurs can go there and find all the resources available to them, right? That was one of the things that they brought up. And then 2, they said, yeah, it would also be great if we could have our events all in one place. So that was kind of like the impetus for us to say, hey, this is a good idea. We should really look into this. But I don't know about some of the organizations that you guys work for. The state, while we get our kind of funding from the taxpayers, we don't have a lot of resources, whether it's monetary or staffing. So we like the idea, but we threw it back to the ESOs around the state to say, hey, you know what? Let's get a group of each, some of the folks in the state that can help us kind of solve this problem, and we can pay for it, right? So we recruited some folks from Milwaukee, Madison, some folks from the rural areas, and also universities. So it's kind of like getting the whole ecosystem of the players that assist the entrepreneurs in the state. We had a group of 7 folks come together and kind of say, okay, here's what we were looking to do, and here's some of the folks that we can reach out to for this type of platform, and this is where SourceLink comes in, which we obviously ended up going with. Some of the things on why we structured it as a regional and hub spoke model is, one, as WDC as a state organization, we've done similar things before in the past. When I looked at kind of the history of some of the platforms or website that we provided out there, it was more of the top to bottom, where, okay, here we are. All right, people, get on this, right? And we didn't have the buy-in. So that's kind of one of the reasons where the regional approach or the spoke model actually worked. We have 9 regions in the state, and the way we set it up is each region controlled their area. So each region has their own kind of committee that gets the word out to all the ESOs or the support organizations out there and invite them into the platform. They decide which organizations go on, because what we wanted to do was we didn't want kind of the businesses or the consultants joining the platform. We wanted to keep it to nonprofits that actually help the entrepreneurs. So for each one of those regions, they decided who came on the site. And also, we knew that they knew everyone, right? It's easier for them to get their peers to go on instead of the state organization telling them. And they also had ownership of that region. So they decide who gets on. They had the ownership, but also there's the marketing end of it, right? So they get all their, each one of the partners within that region tell everyone else, their clients, the entrepreneurs themselves, hey, go on this site. It has everything. So marketing was now kind of done regionally, right? But we also do it on a state level. Probably most importantly, and I'll admit this for our state, we had silos between the partner organizations that help the entrepreneurs. Having them get together to do this kind of broke down some of those silos. So that's one of the most important things of kind of doing it that way, in that regional approach or the hub and spoke way. Another great thing was working with SourceLink, right? So I think we were, I'm not sure if we were the first, but we put them through kind of, hey, here's what we want to do. Can you guys do this? And, you know, you guys know, for those of you that work with SourceLink, they're very accommodating. And we told them, yeah, we want to do this regional approach. Can we launch it one region at a time, like a startup, where we want to test doing this first in one region, see how it works, and then learn from that. And then the next 8 that we launch keeps getting better and better, and it gets easier as we go through. The way we did it with SourceLink, it worked so great that we only kind of had 3 staggered launches where, all right, we'll do a couple here. Oh, that was easy. You know, we learned, let's do 3 this next time, right? And we did 3, and then we're like, all right, let's do the rest of the state. So we were able to launch it within a 6-month time frame. We started probably in the middle of 2020. Everyone was launched by January 21, and that's where we stand. Next phase of the whole regional approach was, okay, we've got these 9 regions, and we had them kind of vote on a regional lead. And those regional leads now meet together every other month to talk about what new features or requests they want on the site, right? And kind of just guiding some of the questions that come up regionally to the rest of the state and share best practices. Most recently, what we're doing from the state level is, since everything on the SourceLink and the hub and spoke model was virtual, right? It's all kind of an online platform. WDC now is sponsoring events where all the ESOs are on each region are getting together. So now we're kind of forcing them to, hey, meet again, especially since, you know, the pandemic. We want everyone to start connecting on a one-on-one level, face-to-face. So we're sponsoring events. There's 2 levels. One is to get all the ESOs together. And then the other one is to get ESOs and the entrepreneurs together, almost like a resource fair for each region. Right? So that's kind of how we're taking it to the next level, or going back old school, using the hub and spoke model to get things done. I don't want to get too far into kind of how the spoke works, because that's going to be Tony. And I'm available to answer any questions as we go along.
Thank you, Ed. And I think that's a lovely segue to Tony Van Doren, who, as a reminder, is actually one of the regional leads for the Start in Wisconsin initiative. And before we switch over to Tony, Ed, thank you. Thank you for sharing about Start in Wisconsin. What you are doing is truly impressive, leading the country and certainly among states in your entrepreneurial approach to serving entrepreneurs. Tony Van Dorn is the Innovation and Business Development Manager for Nicolay College. As I mentioned, she's the regional lead for START in Wisconsin. She manages a program called The Grid and spearheads several different complex grant programs, one of which I just want to quickly mention, that is the SBA Community Navigator Pilot Program. And she has effectively, through that program, kind of added another level of network-driven technical support to entrepreneurs, and that has already resulted in some really impressive collective impact. We've invited her here to give a further insight into what it's like being kind of part of a larger network, and then also creating your own expansive network to deliver services hyper-locally to area entrepreneurs. Tony, go ahead and take us away.
Thank you. Let's see if this works. Everyone see that?
You need to bring black nails.
Not sure who that is, but welcome. I'm Tony Van Dorn with Nicolay College. We are a spoke organization for START in Wisconsin, as Ed mentioned, and we're also a hub for the SBA Navigators grant. So we really use connection as a catalyst to grow our entrepreneurial ecosystem. So with that, I'll hopefully be able to take it away. Okay, so we really focus on partnerships and these regional assets to really build our ecosystem. We're in rural northern Wisconsin, so being a rural area, it's more important to know the folks and what they do to connect them personally. So to do that, we start with our entrepreneurial support agencies. As Ed talked about earlier, those are established organizations, usually with a public mission of direct services to small business owners, entrepreneurs. And that's where we got connected with START in Wisconsin and Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. It just so happened that they were doing the same type of thing that we were trying to do here in northern Wisconsin, but on a statewide level. So it really worked out perfectly that their mission was similar to ours, and we worked really well as a spoke for that organization. Other examples of some of our entrepreneurial support agencies that we connect with are SBA, SCORE, chambers, economic development offices, and small business development centers and that sort of thing. So those were the important first step to connect with them. But our second step, which may be more important for a rural area like ours, are our community navigators. And we call that the Bob factor. And we call it the Bob factor for a funny story. We have a tire salesman in Vilas County that, I mean, if you weren't from the area, you wouldn't think, oh, geez, I don't know where to go. I should ask the tire salesman. But honestly, in Eagle River, Wisconsin, Bob knows everyone. Bob's part of the chamber organizations. He's part of the incubators. He's also part of Vilas County Economic Development. Bob knows everyone. But if you weren't from here, you wouldn't know that this Bob person is who you go to. So we call it the Bob factor. These are trusted, knowledgeable people with expertise that are responsive and listen to local people that they trust. It's a local person in their community that they can talk to. Someone that they know, someone that they like, especially in a small area, having that kind of local connection is important. And we actually started that work with SourceLink before the SBA Navigators grant came along. So when SBA Community Navigators Pilot Program grant came available, it was a perfect fit for our area because they actually asked for a hub and spoke model that initiated community navigators, which we kind of already had started, and some of them are on this call. So you can ask them about their specific spokes in the question and answer because they're here. Important to our program was first cataloging all of these assets and these connections. So once these assets are identified, these Bobs of all the areas and all of the ESOs, we really needed somewhere to keep this accurate information because, as you know, people change, they leave the area, they move, different contacts are in there. So we relied heavily on SourceLink, especially for our data for our spoke organizations. For them to have a starting point of where to reach out and who to contact, we really needed this accessible tool. So that's where we really relied on SourceLink for that connection. With those connections in place, it really doesn't matter if no one knows about it. So intentional programming is super important to our hub and spoke model actually working. So to increase entrepreneurial activity, we really needed consistent offerings of events and educational opportunities for people to really connect and get something. And we needed to connect these entrepreneurs to these ESOs and community navigators. And how are we going to do that? Because not everyone knew the Bobs. Not everyone knew what an economic development corporation does. You'd be surprised. So it was really important that we had consistent and timely marketing of all of these resources. Events like Ed talked about, these in-person resource speed networking events where they can connect with these folks, find out what they do on a personal level and actually meet them. And then none of this matters without supporting our entrepreneurs and our ecosystem. So success stories. And we have on our website, something called Innovators in Action, where we really highlight the successes. And we found those videos are the #1 thing that people click on. They really want to hear about our area, our entrepreneurs and their stories more than anything else. So creating this intentional space for those creative collisions between entrepreneurs and resources is super important. A lot of our, not even just resources, but educational outlets, some of those are on the call today too, creating opportunity both in person and virtual for them to have outlets for information and getting the things that they need just in time. So we work with Mashup Lab from Canada. Kudos to Andrew. If you have questions, he's on the call today. We work with Nifty, which is a global organization that teaches, it's called Network for Entrepreneurship. And we work with our SBDC offices to offer those classes as well. So keeping accurate and up-to-date records of all of those, both public and private. Again, why we lean heavy on SourceLink for that information. And once we do that work, it's always important to remember the impact of what you're doing and to really talk about that. So the facts about our ecosystem, our region, our ESOs, making sure that those are easy to find, making sure that entrepreneurs and small business feel supported through those success stories, and making sure that we catalog those startups and the job creation for our area only helps to build our hub and spoke model, our ecosystem, and the ability to get more funding. So don't forget that impact reporting. And if you have any questions later, please feel free to reach out to me at the grid. And I know I talked fast, so if you need anything afterwards, please feel free. I'd be happy to connect with you. Thanks for giving me the time.
Thank you, Tony. You know, I think there are a couple of points that you made that are really important. Culture and storytelling are not intentionally thought about enough, I think, in our space of entrepreneurial support. And I really appreciate that you made those 2 points. And thank you again for all of the excellent work that you are doing in Wisconsin. Now we're going to hear from another pioneering leader who's doing some really amazing work and has been doing an impressive job creating a network of support. And she's joining us from Oakland County, Michigan. Nilda Thomas has built her career empowering small business owners, nonprofits, global companies to start and expand. She is an entrepreneur herself and currently leads the Business Forward program for the government of Oakland County, Michigan. Nilda, go ahead and take us away.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Good afternoon. My name again is Nilda Thomas, and I am the program lead for Oakland County Business Forward. Here's just a few highlights of my experience with space, experience in the corporate, nonprofit, and small business space. And so what I'd like to do is to provide some context on, so let's get started at the beginning on, who we were in Oakland County. The county had what they called the one-stop shop program that provided the services that you see here on the slide, including various seminars and workshops. That program serviced less than about 2% of Oakland County small business annually, and all services were offered on site at our Oakland County offices and only offered during regular business hours, with very few workshops and seminars that were offered. Additionally, there were few partnerships with community organizations like the chambers and the downtown development organizations. And with 39,000 small businesses throughout Oakland County, spread over 910 square miles, realistically, those business owners don't really have the time to travel 30 minutes or more to county offices. And so this was considered an additional barrier. And therefore, the county was unable to reach a significant number of businesses to have any type of measurable economic impact. So as we look at Oakland County's small business landscape, the county is focused on those businesses with 50 or fewer employees and no more than 1.2 million in annual revenue. So why Business Forward? The company decided to take a different approach so they could reach more businesses and to make measurable, more of a measurable impact in the community. So the county decided to switch from the one-stop shop approach and adopt the hub and spoke model. That's when Business Forward was launched in March of this year. So we're nine months young. Instead of having businesses come to one location, the county is proactively reaching out to all businesses by embedding Business Forward consultants throughout communities in the county. And since June, our program has hosted almost 50 workshops and networking events and attended by approximately over 1,000 business owners. Our program is funded through ARPA, the American Rescue Plan, dollars, and it's helping the smallest of businesses, including those home-based businesses, to create a sustainable environment of these businesses so they can thrive and grow. In addition to providing these services to all small businesses, we value diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we support those minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses to connecting them to information, resources, and funding and technical assistance that they previously didn't know was available that they could gain access to. Since launching in March, starting with 8 consultants and servicing 9 communities, we are now doubled in size with 16 consultants and have expanded to over 30 communities. And we have some of our consultants also viewing this afternoon. Our goal is to contact 6,000 of those 39,000 small businesses in Oakland County in the first year. So by March of next year, it'll be a year that we've been in existence. And so far, we've touched over 2,600 small businesses in 9 months versus the previous model in that one-stop shop, which we had touched 500 in an entire year. Our program is supported in collaboration with community-based organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, business organizations, economic development professionals, and the like. And beginning in the first quarter of next year, we'll have funding for one-on-one targeted professional consulting for small businesses with legal professionals, business finance experts, accountants, digital marketing experts, and business coaches, where businesses can become eligible to receive technical assistance, and the program will pay for up to so many hours to get that assistance for them. SourceLink has been really a valuable tool for our team and for the county, and we've adopted our Business Forward Resource Hub, also known as the Resource Navigator, which links entrepreneurs to the right resources at the right time. And the goal is to increase collaboration among small business support organizations. And in addition, Business Forward is using SourceLink Pro CRM to help drive and measure and showcase our economic impact. We're also using the personal action plan on our website as a tool, not only to provide quick response to our entrepreneurs, but also to gain additional insight on the businesses prior to the consultation. We also encourage participation to business owners to use our QR code during seminars and workshops that will take them directly to the personal action plan. We also use QR codes linked to our surveys within SourceLink Pro so we can gauge the effectiveness of our training and future topics of interest in other data. And so I'd like to thank SourceLink for this opportunity to share our experiences with the community. And if you'd like to gain further insight to our Business Forward program, please feel free to scan the QR code and it'll take you directly to our website. And I'll be happy to answer any questions later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nilda. I just love so much what you're doing in Oakland County, and I just so appreciate how you have expanded and been able to really build out that program to serve so many area entrepreneurs. It's truly impressive and inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we want to turn it to Charles Ross. Charles is president and the CEO of the International Business Innovation Association, or MBIA, as it's commonly referred to. His background also includes entrepreneurship, business incubation, economic development, investment management. Charles is not only just an amazing and impressive person, the network that he leads is among the best. And I personally encourage all of you to research becoming members because it has been well worth it for SourceLink. He's doing incredible work, and he's going to talk a little bit about the Ecosystem Building Leadership Project as well, I know. Charles, go ahead and why don't you share with us what you've got going on?
Okay, great. Rob, thanks so much for the introduction and opportunity to share some of our thoughts from MBIA's perspective on the hub and spoke model. So before I kind of get into just sharing a couple of high-level observations, and then we're really looking forward to the Q&A. Just to put it in context, so as Rob mentioned, I've been working with entrepreneurs for about 25 plus years, and that work has evolved from really kind of initially working with entrepreneurs around wealth creation to migrating more towards working with communities and practitioners for economic development and social development, social impact, and some of the community development impacts that entrepreneurship enables. I really enjoyed that transition. For those of you who are not familiar with MBIA, we're a community of a global community of practitioners of entrepreneurial support organizations, represent about 1,000 or so practitioners in just about every state in about 30 or so countries. And then our mission is really to empower these practitioners and these organizations. We look to do that through resources, training, and enabling, facilitating thought leadership amongst our members. So it's really kind of the perspective that I wanted to bring to this discussion. And again, in the spirit of getting us quickly to the Q&A, I'll share a couple of things. So the first thing I'll just talk about is just my thoughts in terms of just the increasing popularity of this particular model. And so many of us that's on this call have been involved in some of the recent funding initiatives from either the federal government or state government, specifically in response to the pandemic. And that's been a great driver of this particular model. But as many of you know, this hub and spoke model has been put in use for several years in the past across communities. And I think this is an effective model because, one, I think it kind of allows for a great blend between effectiveness and efficiency. And now when I think about this model, I think about kind of two major levers here in the model. The first lever I see is around kind of economies of scale that this model can bring to entrepreneurial support. And some of the highlights there is just right off the bat, when you look at supporting entrepreneurs, there are some basic blocking and tackling and processes for supporting entrepreneurs. There's no need to replicate that across several organizations. It's a great opportunity to centralize some of those things to make it more efficient. There's programming that can address entrepreneurs across the board, across sectors, across geography. So it's great for this hub and spoke model to facilitate those economies. Another one I'd love to talk about is when you're looking at a community, you may have like specialized resources like a mentor in residence that's just focused on, say, clean tech companies. And you may have a geography where you don't know where those entrepreneurs are going to come from that have that particular need. With a hub and spoke model, you can actually deploy those resources where they're needed for the entrepreneurs. And then the great thing I like on the economies of scope area is just basically through the spokes is making sure that as much decision-making and service delivery is pushed to the entrepreneurs and to the edges, to the geographies, and then making sure that we don't apply a one-size-fits-all kind of model, that we're able to customize it to the needs of the community and the needs of the entrepreneur. So those are some attractive things that I see with this model. I wanted to just share a couple of examples of things I wanted to bring everyone's attention to. So for MBIA over the years, one of the models that we have been recognizing is a network incubation model, and is very similar to a hub and spoke model. And 3 examples I will cite there from the university sector. So many of our universities are using this model to kind of export their programming and impact across, in many cases, across a state mandate for serving their constituents. I would mention the Advanced Technology Development Center out of Georgia Tech is a great example. Purdue University has a network of incubators that use the hub and spoke model, and then the University of Central Florida. So I would highly recommend checking out those models. Kind of on a regional level, another one of our members is called the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, and they look at more of a regional approach of serving Northeast Ohio for that. I'm going to try to put in the chat when we go to Q&A some links to some resources that we have. There's an initiative called the Business Growth Collaborative that we came across, in some best practice work that we're doing around advancing, improving diversity and advancing inclusion across entrepreneurship centers. And we learned about this great initiative in Northeast Ohio, where there's 11 service providers that have been working together to provide kind of a united front to entrepreneurs and to allow for referral sharing across entrepreneurial support organizations in that particular community. So excellent example. And the last thing I will mention is what Rob alluded to, is a project that MBIA has been working on in conjunction with about 200 or so other practitioners across the US. And it's called our Ecosystem Building Leadership Project, and specifically looking at how we can bring centralized resources to the field of entrepreneurship ecosystem building. This is a field that looks at how do we improve and support entrepreneurs, but not only looking at the individual programs and resources that are available for entrepreneurs, but then looking at how those sectors work with each other. So really looking at a systems approach to providing entrepreneurial support. And this is a project that is looking at what are some of the things that organizations need to come together on in order to advance both the practice of entrepreneurial ecosystem building and the profession. And I'm pleased to be a part of that project. Again, I'm going to put a link in the chat for you to get more information about that. And then I'll turn it back over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Charles. And man, every time I hear you present, I learn something new, and I just am inspired by everything that you are able to balance and that your team is able to do globally. It's really, really great. So I looked through the questions, and there are, I think, 2 general themes that I'm hearing around the questioning around the hub and spoke model. One is structure considerations, and second is financial considerations. So I want to start with the structure first, and talk about whether or not you guys have formal agreements between the hubs and the spokes, or the participating organizations. If you do, what have been, what's good, bad about that? If you don't, why not? Ed, maybe do you want to start with this one, or Tony?
Yeah, I'll go real quick, because mine there's no formal. It's as a state entity, we look for partners, and if they have the same mission, right, that's kind of what we're helping them. So that's kind of how we approach it. If they want the help, we'll give it, but if they don't, so be it.
And Tony, I believe yours may be a little bit of a different situation because of both the contractual obligations from SBA as well as the funding channels. So could you dive into that a little bit?
Sure. So we have both. We have informal, like Ed said, when we have our hub and spoke model with like the started and ESOs. Why we choose the ESOs that we do is because they have the same missions, goals, and ethical agreements in place already. So we don't have to have those formal MOUs in place. It makes it nice and clean. When we talk the SBA grant, the SBA has a requirement where the memorandum of understandings are in place. and the financial disclosure agreements are in place. It just is a way to protect the confidentiality of the entrepreneurs that we serve. Kind of puts things in writing, like what they can and can't do. These are SBA requirements, not necessarily the grid or any of those things, but as part of that grant, we do have formal agreements in place. I wouldn't mind sharing those if anyone wants to see what they look like. You can check them out. There's nothing that scary in there. There's not a ton of teeth, but it's just a reminder to follow ethical confidential practices.
So as someone who has both, do you prefer one over the other? Are they different? What are some of the pros and cons between the two approaches?
It's easier when we work with the ESOs that already have that sort of system in place. It's kind of they understand this is how we do business. It's nice, but there is pros and cons to having the agreements in place, because then when we have a new navigator, maybe it's someone that hasn't done this before, but they have that local knowledge and those connections. So just having that in place is kind of like a nice, hey, I know that you do this at your local coffee shop and this is no big deal, but these are some of the things that we want to make sure that you know. And we do have a lot of trainings in place with our navigators so that they know those things that we assume people know, but when you're an ESO, you know those things and that's part of your daily life. But if you're a navigator, you might not. So there's pros and cons to that. It's just training. No one's ever really had a problem with let's be confidential and ethical with our things. So I've not had any blowback on that yet, knock on wood.
And Nilda, do you have anything to add?
Yes, when we first started, we did have somewhat of memorandum of understanding or letters with our resource partners, but we are also in the process of providing some structure for our consultants now as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Charles?
Yeah, no, what I would mention is for some of the network incubators that we're familiar with, many cases, the spokes will involve, other organizations that might be new to entrepreneurial support. So Chamber of Commerce or municipalities, and the agreements are often put in place and they're great to manage expectations. I think Tony had mentioned, in some cases there might be the expectation that, hey, well, it's just buying the people a cup of coffee. And in many cases, there's infrastructure, there's staff. And so just helping to understand what does it really cost to support entrepreneurs in your community is really important in aligning those expectations.
Excellent. What I'd like to do next, I think, is switch gears and talk a little bit about the financial component, because I think this is really interesting and not often talked about. But particularly as funding can be used as a tool to help facilitate collaboration. And it's something that I first heard back from Network Kansas. They have a fund program that they provide to communities to give to entrepreneurs. And that loan program acts as kind of their gateway to get their foot into the door with local stakeholders and to bring them together. And in some way, with the SBA Community Navigator pilot program in particular, because the funding is coming from SBA to you, Tony, and then you are, as I understand, providing funding then to those hubs, correct? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sorry, yes. That's where those financial agreements come into place. So part of that grant is us as a hub having funding to give these spokes to do this particular outreach. So the SBA's goal with the Community Navigators pilot program was really to have someone go out into the community instead of those coming in, because we all know that as much as we know exactly what we're doing and who to connect people to, the average entrepreneur might not. So it's really their focus is to give the funding to have that person in each of those communities. And that's what the funding is for those navigators to do that outreach work, really take them by the hand and bring them into all of those places, bring them to the right education, reach out to them instead of the other way around. And it's been a really good experience. And we have a couple of our spokes on the call. So not to throw the ball out there, but I know Mary Sue Drum is on there. I know that Andrew is one of our resource partners, and Ed, obviously, we work with WEDC and Start in Wisconsin very exclusively for that. So.
Nilda, what I'd like to do, because you mentioned this, but I think it's worth just taking a little time to dive into this. So, where Tony is providing money to the existing ESO network to empower and allow them to do their great work, you are, as I understand, also funding private sector small businesses, right? To help your entrepreneurs. So it's kind of like this double benefit where you're able to take funds and empower a local small business to provide that service back to other entrepreneurs. And I know you mentioned it, but I just wanted to underline that and have you talk to us a little bit about that, because I think that's so wonderful.
Yes, yes. And actually that's a program that we're going to be launching in the first quarter. And basically what it is that, people want to do business with people that they know. And so we think it's best to have those subject matter or professional, service experts that are within the community to help those same entrepreneurs that are there who are maybe just be starting up, or they have an idea, or they're at a point where they need someone to help them with their marketing, or they need someone to help with legal, or whatever the case may be. And so, that is how, that program, is going to work. So we're really excited to hopefully get that off the ground after the first of the year. So we do have someone that's going to be dedicated to that specifically, and working through our chambers, right? Because they have those members who are professionals, and letting them know that we have this opportunity for them. And they'll be more or less put in a pool. There'll be an RFP that will go out. They'll have to respond to that RFP. The company will be vetted. And once they're approved, they'll be in that resource pool where our Business for consultants would be able to refer those businesses that need that technical assistance to that professional expert.
That's just so cool. That's just so cool. It's like you're tapping into the existing private sector network and helping them to help other entrepreneurs. I just love that so very much. And I'm glad that you were able to share that. The other question that I saw and that everybody always asks, where's the money, right? Where do we have money to do this kind of model or to do this kind of work? The ecosystem leadership building project, mouthful. I'm so excited about it. I can't even spit it out. Is working on that. And Charles, I know you can talk about that. We also did a webinar for Global Entrepreneurship Week. There was that 2 years ago. If you could drop that link in, because that'll give you ideas on where to look. But Charles, can you talk a little bit about that piece of it?
Sure, yes. So I guess the main thing that I would say about that is that when we take a look at how do we support entrepreneurs at the systems level, that opens up many new players, partners that have a vested interest in helping communities deal with that or address and attack that opportunity. And a major sector that is interested in this kind of work is the philanthropic sector. So this particular project is an outgrowth of thought leadership work by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, and is an extension of their eShip initiative. And they are looking at providing resources to facilitate kind of collaboration and collective impact at the field level. And as a part of this effort, we're also looking at how can we bring in other foundations that are very interested in entrepreneurship and what it can do for communities. So we're hopeful that that'll bring more resources into the space.
Excellent, excellent. And I will say, just from our end, and I know what Darren and I are seeing increasingly across the country, community foundations are starting to get this, and they're starting to fund it. Traditional economic development dollars for business retention and expansion, and even some attraction dollars are now increasingly being redirected, particularly after the pandemic. And funds had to change to support and keep open businesses. We're starting to see the funding and mindset start to change. And Tony, I want to go back to a point you made earlier about collecting the data and being able to tell a collective impact story, which all of you now can do because all of your partners are contributing and sharing their impact, so you can tell that larger story of what can be done together. I think is going to be really, really important. And we only have a minute left, so I just want to round out and say that I really believe that these networks, that building and boarding networks of technical service delivery and entrepreneurial support is where we need to evolve and where we will evolve to. Beyond, Neil, to your point, it's nice to have a one-stop shop, but I think the future of this work rests in building these collaborative networks of entrepreneurial support and service delivery. And I believe that all of you are leading that. And so I really appreciate and thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with everyone today. I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us for this very quick hour. I want to thank and appreciate our partnership with Global Entrepreneurship Network and Jonathan for sharing that wonderful intro video. And join everyone in celebrating 15 amazing years. We thank everyone for coming. Get back to work, go support your entrepreneurs and small business owners, and have a wonderful rest of this week. Thank you.
Thanks all.